Welcome, Mental Health Monday family. We're so happy that you are here with us again this evening. Hopefully your week, well, it just started today, but hopefully your today, Monday, was a good day. I know I had a not as busy and hectic day that I thought, so it was more relaxing. I mean, I still worked, but wasn't as busy as I thought it would be. So
What
it's
wasn't as
more,
manic as usual?
wasn't as manic as usual. How was yours, Dr. White?
Um, it had its little ups and downs, but overall it was smooth, I would say.
All right.
It was smooth. So I
That's
cannot complain. I refuse to.
well, that's good. That's good. And Clint is here. Good to see you,
Oh
Clint.
man.
But Scott was here before you were, or at least he wrote in the chat before you did, Clint. So I don't know if Scott's trying to be the first one because I feel like, yeah, but Scott was here before you, Clint. But it's always good to see all of you. Please put in the
Absolutely.
chat where you're viewing from. And before we really start, please put this on your social media. Say, hey, if you guys have mental health questions from a licensed psychiatrist and a licensed therapist, please tune into Mental Health Monday. Invite people and share this on your social media for sure.
Well said.
Because today, I don't know if you guys saw the uh, last minute actually flyer that went out, but we are doing Freestyle Mental Health Monday. So you guys are making up this program. Your questions are going to help us do this program today. So we are answering all mental health questions. Just we're not your mental health providers, therapists, psychiatrists, but we're going to try to give you, some general answers as we always usually answer questions. But this time we don't have a theme. We're taking all types of questions, mental health questions, and relationship, marriage questions. So, you guys fill up our chat with questions because we want to answer those for you and we look forward to doing that. So, man, if I'm just thinking back, like, if I would have, you know what? Honestly, I'm going to take us back. Remember Dr. Laura? Do you remember Dr. Laura? She used to
Absolutely.
literally, this is
Absolutely.
way before I even thought about becoming a mental health professional, like way, way before. But I used to listen to her. I never called in, but I would like hear her answer other people's questions. Now,
Yeah.
granted, I felt like she could be a little nicer at times.
Oh
I was like,
man. I
I hope,
I was
I hope,
yeah.
yeah, I hope Dr. White and I are nicer. I think we are.
Oh man, she was so to the point,
But
just
yes.
really to the point.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was funny because she was a hit on the radio,
She
but
really was.
then on television, it was so to the point it didn't land the same. It
Yeah.
was so yeah, it's very interesting.
Radio and TV are definitely different. Different type of
Absolutely.
audience. Yeah. It's like you could say like more maybe straight to the point kind of hardcore stuff over the radio a little bit easier than it like instead of they can't see you, they can just hear you,
And they can't see
right?
your facial expression. And I guess also you can't see how the words are impacting the person.
Right.
So
Right.
it's very interesting. But
Mhm.
but yeah,
Yes.
definitely not the approach I've adopted most of the
No,
time.
me neither. Not in therapy either. But however, she did like for her raw information, she had some good stuff. But did you have another favorite like person that I don't know? I'm trying to think. I was just thinking in my head, like, who did I used to listen to before I became a mental health? I can't even think. But Dr. Laura just pops out in my mind right away.
I mean, you got the Gottmans. I really like the Gott.
True.
I liked Gottman.
But I actually learned about Gottmans once I became well, when I was in school. That's when I
That's
learned about the
true.
Gottmans.
That's true.
Um, but I definitely, but now I listen to a lot of, I love listening to other people, especially podcasts with mental health professionals. I love to, there's good, like, um, yeah, there's people that I like. So,
Good.
yeah.
No, good point. Good
So
point.
yes, but we're glad that you guys like us, right? So you're here.
Absolutely. Thank you for being here.
So please put some questions in the chat. Remember, this is freestyle, meaning like we're taking all mental health questions again, and we're also dealing with relationships and marriage, family. parenting, it's all here, guys. We'll try to tackle all of it and do our very best,
Right. And if you don't
that we
ask
can
us
do.
questions, we'll ask each other questions.
Right. Yes, yes,
100%.
we will. We will. Matter of fact, we might want to start
Yeah.
that way, even though I don't have a question planned for you.
Right.
Well, I'll ask this question. This is just to get to know. Okay, there's one. Before I could even say it, there it goes.
Yeah.
All right. What are some qualifiers of trauma? Meaning, how can you identify trauma? That's a good question,
That's a
Clint.
great question, Clint.
I want to
But
just
just
take this. I know you're
yeah,
going to take a stab at it too. And I just want to
go for
say
it.
that, first of all, I know that there are traumas with a capital T, and then there's trauma with like a lowercase t, but it's still all trauma to that person, whether, because people would think, I know even I used to think this way, like, if you haven't been sexually assaulted or physically abused or that type of thing, you haven't suffered trauma, right?
Ouch.
But that's far from the truth. Trauma can be being bullied as a kid on the playground, or um, parents not you never feeling like you had the right to say how you feel about things in a respectful way. I mean, these are just examples. I mean, that can be traumatic for a child, and then you grow up still taking that into your adult life. And so there's many different types of traumas, but it's things that there's not just trauma impacts everyone differently.
Profound.
So
Profound.
you can't just list it out and say, okay, if you have this, this, and this, you've experienced trauma, because everyone processes it differently. What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts, Dr. White?
So, like you said, I'm going to echo some of what you said, because you said um, there's going to be something of a variance, but I'll say, for example, one level of trauma is when your boundaries get violated.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now you can see that can occur on a spectrum. You could just say there's a boundary of not being talked over,
Mm-hmm.
that's slight. And then there's the boundary of you're touching me and I didn't ask to be touched. And you can see how it can progress from there. There's also the trauma that's related to neglect.
Mm.
One of the most profound things that happens in relationships is we make bids. We
Mm-hmm.
make bids. And for
Yes.
those of you in relationships, especially romantic relationships, please pay attention to this.
Right.
We make bids. And what I mean, for example, is you walk inside your home and you say, that's actually a bid right from jump, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
then you say something like, man, I've had a hard day. That's a bid, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is it can be a request for the person to say, okay, let me hear you.
Mm-hmm.
And what do people do a lot of times? You had a tough day. You should hear about my day. Oh my
Right.
goodness. That is an unanswered bid.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, I just feel it in my stomach. It's like there's a little twinge,
Mm.
when your bid goes unanswered, when your bid goes rejected.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's traumatic.
Right.
That's traumatic. And
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to not sometimes why we will always champion therapy so much is sometimes you didn't even know that you were being impacted by that way. You just
Right.
know there's some people it's no fun to be around. You just
Mm-hmm.
know that there's some people when you're hurting, you don't want to be near them. And
Mm-hmm.
sorry guys, but a lot of times as Christians, sometimes we'll do this kind of stuff. Present, I have had a rough day today. If you look in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 17, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I love the gospel, but
Right.
that's not really what I was talking about. You
Right.
should you should think about how what Christ went through for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yet again, another really, really good point. Christ did do a lot for me, but right now I was just hoping that you would hear me.
Right.
And so these are some of the things that these are some of the ways that we cannot answer bids. It's subtle and yet
Mm-hmm.
profound.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a little on the traumatic side. And then there is trauma, there's
Yeah.
violating a person's boundaries, there's
Right.
assaulting a person,
Mm-hmm.
there is sexual assault, there is so trauma is a huge topic, Clint. It's a huge topic.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
how do you know your boundaries are being violated? Your boundaries are being violated. Your bids are going unanswered.
Yes.
These are some of the ways that you can know that you're being traumatized.
Right.
Sorry, a little. We just addressed 5 minutes in a topic that you can get
Oh
years of
yes.
training in trauma. So
Mm-hmm.
just keep this
Mm-hmm.
response in
Mm-hmm.
that context.
All right. How should a person deal with the bad feeling of guilt when forgiveness has already been given?
Hmm. Hi,
Mm.
Deborah. Thank you for that
Yes.
question. And
Yeah,
Clint,
that's a
thank you
great
for your question
question.
as well. Well, um, I see you're still noodling, so I'll take the first stab. Um,
You're
let
processing it. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
Deborah. First of all, thank you for the question.
Mm-hmm.
And man, on some level, I think we all have to deal with this one.
Mm-hmm.
How should a person deal with the guilt? So here God has extended forgiveness to us.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's the spiritual, but in the horizontal, sometimes people have forgiven us, and it is hard to accept it. One of the things that one would explore at that point, Deborah, is, am I making this about myself rather than sometimes keeping the focus on that person? So, for example,
Mm-hmm.
keeping the focus on, Christ has given me this gift. What if I focused on that? How awesome that he's given me this gift.
Mm-hmm.
Um, how generous, and maybe the thing that deserves my focus is understanding that generosity. Or if it's a human being, here this human being has meaningfully forgiven me. What if I direct
Mm-hmm.
my focus to that? They found it in their heart to forgive me. How generous. What are ways that I can actually celebrate that and reciprocate it and make sure I never do that again? And how generous. So you can see I can operate in the channel of gratitude,
Right.
or I can be self-focused. I
Mm-hmm.
don't deserve that. And I just can't believe they did it. And one of the patterns you'll see in the thoughts is I, I, I
Mm-hmm.
don't believe it. I don't believe it. I don't. You're making it about you.
Mm-hmm.
And when we focus inward, a lot of times we can often have problems from just a focus
Mm-hmm.
on ourselves. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I just want to say, Deborah, that is a great question. And I think that, it's to be able to um, receive forgiveness from someone that you have harmed or did wrong to, that can, that you're happy that they're forgiving you, but it is hard to deal with the guilt and the bad thing that you've done. But the reason why a lot of times we struggle with guilt and just that emotion is we do feel bad about it, but what happens is that we have a hard time allowing ourselves to forgive ourselves for doing that thing. When you forgive yourself, you are actually saying, I feel so bad that I've done this. And the only, if true forgiveness for yourself is really the only way to really move forward with that, is to turn from those ways and decide, I'm never going to do that again. I never want to feel, I hate this feeling. I hate the way I've made somebody else feel, and I never want to do that again. And that's real, true forgiveness for yourself, to give yourself the strength and the power to turn away and never to do that again.
That's profound. But in what you just said, though, I heard you have to, on a deep level, feel I have value and I'm worthy of being forgiven.
Yeah.
That can be a
Yeah.
real challenge.
Yeah.
I'm
That is a
worthy
real
of being
challenge.
forgiven. And I mean, this is where Christianity can be helpful. We are children of a king.
Right. Right.
And we were redeemed with blood, and not cheap blood.
Mm-hmm. No.
We were redeemed with very, very expensive blood. Um, so it's a mystery then why we wouldn't feel worthy. But I think that's where we have to start thinking, no, I am worthy of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
I am worthy of forgiveness. But yeah, again, a huge topic. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, Clint, these are some huge topics.
they are huge. I'm glad
Next,
you and Amber can see the chat because I can't see the chat, unfortunately. I did at the beginning, but I can't now, but that's okay because Amber's managing that. So
we
it's
got
cool.
you.
Yes.
Scott Dingus. Hello, Scott. He said, I would love to discuss divorce and remarry someone that I'm equally yoked to. I would like to discuss divorce.
All right.
Maybe you could
So,
ask a question about divorce. So rather than us launching into something that maybe is not scratching the itch, what is your question about divorce that we can direct some attention to? So we'll be
mm-hmm.
looking out for that in the Scott. What specifically is your question about divorce? And then we'll move to Jason's question in the meantime while Scott kind of specifies it a little bit. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So Jason said, what's the difference of seeing a coach versus a therapist?
Hmm.
Can a coach actually help with deep seated mental health issues?
I'll
Yeah,
take an
great
initial
question.
stab at that.
Yeah,
That is
go
a
for
good
it.
question. That is
Go
a good
for it.
question because that is something. I mean, coaching is something fairly new, and when I say fairly new, that it's just very popular right now, like life coaches or health coaches and all these different areas. Um, the One of the differences between a mental health professional and a licensed therapist, a psychiatrist, a psychologist, is that we have a governing board that governs what we do. Meaning we actually are held accountable. I should say to a higher, more than just ourselves. Like the coaching industry is not governed by anyone right now, and I'm sure that will change. I'm sure that will change eventually. And because and I'm not saying that it's that coaches, they're it's bad that they're not governed by anyone right now, but that's just the reality of it. So we have to license therapists or mental health professionals. We have to work by an ethical standard. If we do something wrong, you could call into our state board that license us, and we can get a bad report, that type of thing. But if a coach does something, there's no one to call, unless they are, if they, yeah, there's just nobody to call at this time. But again, I think that will change. And so with that said, coaches have a lot of good things that they can share and help you with. um, they haven't been trained in the same way, but it doesn't mean that they don't have any value at all. And that's what I'll say about that. What are your thoughts?
Okay, so there's a different area of focus. And so while therapists will focus on healing the past, addressing mental health issues, trauma, anxiety, depression, a coach more focuses on optimizing the present and the future.
True.
So they're going to help with goals. They're going to improve performance, and they're kind of achievement focused.
Mm-hmm.
Therapists are more going to be working with somebody with a diagnosis, sometimes dysfunction, emotional pain that needs
Mm-hmm.
treatment. Whereas with a coach, they're working with clients who are functioning but want to go from like good to great.
Right.
So really, a coach helps with solving non-clinical, issues most of the
Mm-hmm.
times. With therapists, you're going to hear them do things like CBT, DBT, EMDR, diagnosis,
Mm-hmm.
treatment plan, that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But again, a coach more focused on goal setting, accountability, strategy building, and motivational techniques.
Mm-hmm.
And I could go on. Therapy
Right.
requires a license,
Mm-hmm.
LCSW,
Mm-hmm.
LPC, LCSW, licensed clinical social worker,
Right.
or licensed marriage and family therapist.
Mm-hmm.
That's our Atonte, a
Mm-hmm.
psychologist, or
Mm-hmm.
even a psychiatrist like
Mm-hmm.
myself.
Mm-hmm.
So strict, and like you said, it's Sister Tante, we are bound by strict legal and ethical regulations.
Right.
Whereas with coaching, an official license is not required, though there are certification programs that exist. and there are much fewer legal regulations. So
Mm-hmm.
I can't practice psychiatry. I can't do psychiatry in Maine and places where I'm not licensed to.
Right.
But coaching, I could do all over the US,
Right.
So those are some
Right.
of the practical differences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
And I
so
was
then he
gonna
said,
say that. Oh, go ahead.
go
I
ahead.
was
No,
gonna say on
go
that
ahead.
too is therapists. They also have different modalities that are like solution focused therapy. That would be more like coaching because it's only solution focused therapy. Only focuses on uh, the future. Like if you're using that modality in therapy, like what do you what are your goals? What do you want to do? So it's more like in the system of coaching they don't go back and look at some of the past things that have brought you to this point. Like in other therapies, they're going to take a look at your past and why why maybe you feel stuck and you're not achieving the goals that you want, those type of things. But so yeah, so I would say that honestly, in therapy, there is a lot of coaching that's going on, but there's a lot of other things going on as well.
Right.
So it
And
just go ahead.
because yeah, there's a point in therapy where we do want the person to be more future oriented.
Right.
And sometimes they're starting to thrive. And so
Mm-hmm.
now you're going to shift your focus to more coaching style. Okay, well now let's build on that. And
Right.
you do heal at some point. And so and the person will still say, "Hey, I want to grow more." And now you can continue to build, and sometimes of course you're going to do more coaching, so
Right.
more a coaching approach than a therapy approach. So
Yes.
as a patient heals, you're allowed to do more coaching, but I think as a therapist is more able to understand the difference between, okay, now the person's healed, so now we can do more of a coaching approach.
Right. Absolutely. I love this next question. I'd like to take a stab. I studied journalism, but bad news affects my mental health in some ways. I'm not practicing my profession. How can I deal with this? Jacqueline. Oh, okay. Jacqueline, yes. That's
Joaquin.
That's a good
Joaquin.
question. And the reason why I wanted to take a stab at it because I studied journalism too, and that was my first love. That was my very first love was to do journalism. That's all I ever wanted to do. And then life in the journey of life, God brought me into mental health. And there was a time before I got into mental health where I definitely felt like, man, I'm not following what I originally wanted to do and to deal with that. But you're saying that like just working in the news industry affects your mental health. And that's look, with us watching the news, it affects our mental health. So you're not alone in that case. It can affect our mental health because there's so many sad things that are happening just like one after one and then working in that industry. So it's really about perspective. Because I'll say this as a mental health professional, I don't know, you probably get this question a lot too, Dr. Whyte. People say, isn't it really sad and hard to listen to people's problems all day long? And I'm like, and I really tell people it's not being a mental health professional is not for everyone. It really isn't. I feel like I don't know. It's just like because there's certain. I'm gonna use my husband as an example. I always use him as an example. He should watch Mental Health Monday more. He'd see I use him as an example often. But he is a very deeply empathetic person. Like I couldn't see. My husband's a pastor. It's funny that I would say this, but and he can pastor and give therapy on like a certain level and not, but if he had to hear the things that I hear on a daily basis, he would just be crying all day long. That's how empathetic he is, like he just can't. And I'm not saying I'm not empathetic, but it's just, I guess when you're there for, when you put yourself in the place, well, this is the place you are in, but when you put yourself in a place that they need my help, they need me to, they're here for me to help them, and so with that mindset, I'm hearing the painful things they're sharing, but I'm able to process it, and because I feel like because I'm not in the situation, I will have some answers for them to help them, even though I'm being very empathetic with them, but try to help them to get through this. So I said all that to say that if that is too much for you, there's nothing wrong with stepping away and maybe doing journalism in a different way, where maybe you're not helping to produce the news with all the sad stories, but you're able to in some way do journalism and and provide information without producing negative sad stories. Okay, that's my shot. What's your answer?
Well, first and foremost, you you were hitting it, and like it's and you're kind of gonna say everything I just said, but you just said it in a different way.
Okay.
Um, you know, and I know that when people come into you, they don't leave the same way.
Right.
You know you and I know you're a phenomenal therapist, and I know the way they came in, they often don't leave. That's why we can do what we do,
Right.
because it's not like we're just hearing sad stories and like, no, it's like you wouldn't believe the power of informed words. You
Right.
wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe the ability to reframe. Now take Joaquin for example. um yes, I would listen and hear, hey, how is the news impacting you, and why is that, and why does it position you that way?
Mm-hmm.
And we would really delve into it. But at its core, journalism is just like medicine, which is just like law, which is just like nursing.
Mm-hmm.
It's so broad. It's
Yeah.
so broad.
Right.
So there's once you decide I don't like negative news, like don't you wish Joaquin developed the GNN network, the Good News Network? Like, don't you
I think there
love
is a
those?
network called that.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be
There is.
surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Like, imagine, so Joaquin could find those stories that are so inspirational, so
Mm-hmm.
inspirational. You take the ugliest tragedy, there's always these stories that just make you just give you chills. The generosity, the courage,
Mm-hmm.
it's always there. Maybe Joaquin, that's your calling, that you find the beauty even in the ugliest situations,
Right.
and and that's impactful, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just focus on beautiful situations, you find the beauty in the beautiful situations and you
Mm-hmm.
bring that to our attention. Because I tell you right now, sometimes when you listen to news, it tempts you to lose your belief in the beauty of the human story, but it's
Mm-hmm.
always there. It's always
Mm-hmm.
there. It's a world of good and evil. Good,
Yes.
there will be evil, but you're always going to be able to find some good. And this is one of the things that I know I encourage my patients with, that as bad as there are things that have happened, if you pay attention, there's some good things that are happening as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I was just going to say this. I know it's going to another question, but the joy that we receive when you see a client or patient, the light bulbs go off or they're getting better and they just have made a perspective change and a change in their life, it's worth the hours of, listening to different, different negative things to see them grow. It's worth it. Like, I know I leave feeling very fulfilled. So, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. It's funny, Charisse, you go, how do mental health professionals handle their own mental health? A lot of mental health professionals are go to therapy, but the funny thing about it
I have a
is
therapist.
you had to just out it like that, right?
Well, because when
No.
I was taught in school, like, no, with the school I mean I went to, you had to have at least, to graduate, you had to have at least, I forgot how many hours of your own therapy, so that you would know what it felt like when your clients to come to sit down and to be able to share. And I thought that was great because it was a good experience to just have to be on the other side of things. But no, but therapists need therapists. It's great. We have to keep our own mental health good.
No question.
And it's like
Well,
a maintenance thing, you know?
I make it a point to find people who I know listen well. Like I'll
Mm-hmm.
say that, because that's
Okay.
ultimately what I
Right.
like. People who do a really nice job listening. That to me is super helpful.
I can't say
But
I go to my therapist all the time,
all
but
the
I
time.
have one. So when I need to talk to someone, we're already established. You know what I mean? So
Right.
yeah,
You have your mental health team in place
right,
before the crisis, which is
right,
super smart.
exactly,
Super smart.
exactly.
Now, the other really funny thing is you would think the hard part is the sickness that we find in the therapeutic setting. And what's interesting, Charisse, is it's actually the stressors around that that, if anything, are the most frustrating things. Whether it's third party payers, or just like you wouldn't believe the things around that, because as I was explaining to my mother the other day, like when you're in front of that patient and you get an opportunity to help them create some value,
Mm-hmm.
and you see them come in broken and walk out a different person,
Yes.
it's really like, it doesn't keep you down. If anything, it yeah, yeah,
It's
it's
almost like a
quite an
dopamine hit.
experience.
It's probably like it's a dopamine hit. Like, it's like we feel good.
It's spiritual. It's like,
Yeah.
it's just amazing. It's
Mm-hmm.
an absolute amazing feeling to be a resource to a person. So no, it's not people just coming in broken and you just observing them and leaving them broken.
Mm-mm.
You help them on their path to healing, and then that's
Right.
amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
It is. It is. All right.
Amra, how do I overcome haunting memories from my past, from times I was an alcoholic? I capture my thoughts, I give them to God, remind myself that I'm a new creation, but how do I overcome the spiritual attack?
That formula that you just put is what what it really is. You said you capture your thoughts. I love that. Give them to God and remind yourself who you are. And that is just on repeat. I mean, that just goes on repeat because um, those memories are still there, and you doing that over and over and over again, and I'm sure over time it's become less and less and less, but you're saying it hasn't gone away completely. But I believe that's still the recipe for success in that area.
No, well said. You said it, Sister Tanta. You said it, Amra, and I will add this to that. Um, you cannot erase memories,
Mm-hmm.
but you can crowd them out.
Yeah.
You
I
can
like that.
crowd them out.
Crowd them
um,
out.
Memories, the essence of memories is the patterning of our minds. So, well, there's a thing called neuroplasticity.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are neural networks, there are grooves. Like, think of the highway, and you know, but there are grooves. And the more we think, the more we hardwire those grooves and those networks. The more we think about that thing, the less we think about it, the softer the grooves get, and
Mm-hmm.
the neuroplasticity diverts itself to the things you're actually dedicating your thoughts to.
Mm-hmm.
So, Amra, an important strategy is build new, meaningful memories.
Yes.
Awesome, beautiful, powerful memories, like that beautiful man you're married to, right? It's like you create memories,
Mm-hmm.
with them. I really admire you guys' relationship. I admire your story.
Mm-hmm. Amen.
um and it's something beautiful that you're doing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
just generate the memories that crowd out those awful, memories. And as far as these dark memories, the true purpose for revisiting a memory is when you can draw power from it.
Mm-hmm.
Is when you can draw power. And if you can't draw power from it, leave it alone. The
Mm.
day may come when you can, but if you emerge from a memory feeling weaker, that's a hint. Leave it alone. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have a space in your future.
Mm-mm.
And you leave it alone and create new memories.
Right.
This is why sometimes it's not the best idea to keep reciting those old stories, and it's not always the best idea.
Yeah.
Build new, sober
Sober.
stories, sober
Yes.
stories that are so awesome, so voluminous, that they just crowd out the memory, and you are taking up the real estate. You're occupying the real estate with new, sticky, powerful, meaningful memories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Another,
Agreed.
do you use CBT? Do you use CBT?
I do.
CBT,
Or I cognitive behavioral therapy, yes. But go ahead. You can go ahead. I do. I do in my
yeah,
clients.
so CBT is cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's based on the premise that your mood impacts your thoughts, and your thoughts impact your mood. So that if you want to change, your mood, you got to change your thoughts.
Yes.
And ultimately, CBT gets at the linkage between your thoughts and your mood and your thoughts patterns. And so it has you do things like interrogate your thinking. Is
Mm-hmm.
it valid? Well, then we have to abandon it. It's very
Mm-hmm.
systematic.
Right.
So it absolutely has its place. It's incredibly well studied. I don't think you
Mm-hmm.
can mention CBT without discussing Aaron Beck, the
Mm-hmm.
founder of
Mm-hmm.
CBT, and now, of course, his daughter has taken up the charge. You remember her name?
I don't remember her name.
Something Beck. It's something, I don't know if it's Linda
Yeah,
Beck. I forget her name,
I
but
don't. But
she's
I,
definitely taken up the charge.
yeah, no, I definitely use CBT every day, probably with clients. I mean, in some way, shape, and form, just to, again, to have them to just become more aware of their thoughts and their feelings and then their behavior. And yeah, and like what you said, challenging those thoughts, those negative, those automatic negative thoughts. Like the automatic negative thoughts for the majority of our life have never really been challenged for most people, right? They just let them like fire off and we just accept them. But when you're understanding those negative thoughts are what create your mood and then your behavior, and that once you become aware of the negative thoughts, you're like, wait a minute, I can actually start to interrogate these thoughts, put them on trial, get new thoughts, and then, like you said, the neuroplasticity, we can have our brains can change, our thought process can change. And so that is one of the therapies that when I use that, it's just like it's they clients just feel so empowered because they're like, I can have power over these negative thoughts, because for most of their life they just felt like, well, I'm just a slave to this.
Absolutely.
This is just how it has to be. And what CBT helps people with is to realize that it doesn't have to be that way.
This is why reflective writing is
Mm,
so powerful.
yes.
And sometimes if you just like write a brain dump, if you just write and write, I know when I'm really furious, when something has really angered me, man, it is so cathartic to just write, 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 write. And then I'm like, and there's no editing, right? There's no
Right.
editing.
Right.
So I do it next to a shredder so that like I
Yeah.
can write to my heart's content and make sure nobody's gonna find this,
And then you,
and then I just shred it. And
all
it
right.
just feels so cathartic. But
That's good.
the point is like you're like, I didn't even know I was thinking this way.
Mm,
um,
mm-hmm.
Now, those are the thoughts that you don't want anybody to find. And then other times you're just journaling your thoughts, sometimes your dreams, your aspirations. And
Mm-hmm.
it's so interesting when you read it because you're like, I didn't know I was reading, I didn't know I felt that way. And a really cool thing is sometimes years later when you revisit it, you're like, really? I was thinking that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So without that kind of intention, you might never realize the thoughts that are swirling around your head that are connected to your emotions, and more important than that, that are connected to your actions.
Right.
So
Right.
something to
Yes.
think about. Now,
This is an
Mr.
excellent.
Sneaky,
I know, Mr. Sneaky. That's wow.
Mr. Sneaky. Um,
Okay, listen to this question. It says, I've always felt like needing therapy means God isn't enough to comfort me. How do I view this? Or are you asking how do we view this, or
how should he view it so
how
that,
should you view this?
yeah,
Got it,
how
got it,
should he
got
view
it.
it? Yeah.
Well, obviously we're Christian mental health therapists, or mental health professionals. So we definitely believe that we can be used, but along with what God is trying to do in your life. And God, obviously, it to me is the ultimate mental health therapist for everybody, right? But he can use humans and other humans to help you in your mental health journey. And it doesn't mean to go to therapy that you are discrediting what God could do. Because I believe that what therapists can do is, again, help to um, work along with what God is wanting, positive things that God wants to do in your life. Like He wants you to have positive thinking and not automatic negative thinking and things like that, and along with a lot of other things that you may be dealing with. And so, just like a doctor, I mean, God could heal, He could just touch us and heal us, right? But He allows us to be able to go to human medical doctors that can help us along the way. And the same thing is with the mental health professionals. We by no means replace God in your life, and you're not weak if you go to a mental health professional because you are a Christian. And so whatever a mental health professional is telling you, or you guys are dealing with, you can still process that through your Christian understanding of what God wants for you and wants to do in your life. What are your thoughts, Dr. Whyte?
Well, thank you for validating that, especially as a pastor's wife. Um, what's funny? Um, with this question, Mr. Sneaky, I would refer you to one of the first therapeutic interventions found in Scripture, and we actually find it in Genesis. The setup for it is where in Genesis, God literally says, "It is not good for the man to be alone." He literally says that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the things that happens in companionship is people being able to hear one another effectively. But now, when you think about our first parents, Adam and Eve, their emotional intelligence is off the chain.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, after the fall, Eve is feeling pretty bad because she has just ushered in death.
Mm-hmm.
And up to that point, her name was woman. The therapeutic intervention is where Adam then says, "Look, your new name is Eve, mother of all living."
Mm-hmm.
Here, this person has just ushered in death, but he renames her Eve, mother of all living. So, in the face of such of an ugly event, notice the intervention. That's not a surgical intervention. That's not a physical intervention. That is a psychotherapeutic intervention.
Right.
And it begs the question, man, how are you impacting the people in your life in the midst of their mistakes? What are you calling them? So,
Mm-hmm.
my point being, God invented psychotherapy. He invented it.
Mm-hmm.
He invented our ability to help one another with words, observation, and insight.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, excellent. Very good. We have Ashley asking, so I'm new to the health message and I listened to much of E.G. White. I'm very sick, so I'm trying to follow her counsel, but I'm in an unsupportive environment. Any advice? So what I'm hearing, Ashley, is that you're very sick, so you're having some health issues, and your environment, whatever that um, is not really supporting you in your journey and trying to follow the counsel that um, through the health message. So that can be very, very difficult when you don't have the emotional support to make changes in your lifestyle. So, I mean, unless people are physically stopping you from doing things, I mean, if this is a decision that you have made for yourself and for your health, you can't really look to others for validation. You know what I mean? You have to, if like this is for your health. This is, you said you're very sick. So this is for your life, right? This is for you to to feel well and to be well and not to be saved in the kingdom like this makes you a better Christian, but for your physical health. All right, did you guys see the balloons? Did you see those balloons?
I saw those
Okay.
balloons. I'm
So
so
I think
glad you said that because I'm not imagining things. That's
no,
great.
I So I'm sorry, Ashley, but back to this. So again, you're not looking. Again, if people aren't physically stopping you from eating this way, and maybe they're always, I don't know. It sounds like I don't know if they're mocking you for the way that you're eating, or teasing the fact that you're not eating how they're eating. I'm not sure, but either way, you have to block out all that negative noise, and always on a daily basis. It sounds like you're living in that situation. Remind yourself why you are doing what you're doing, and what you're doing is what's going to help you to be as healthy as you can be. I mean, you're sick, and so maybe it's helping you feel better. It's helping you in your journey. I mean, it's unfortunate that someone would mock you or not make it easy for you when you're sick, but you're in that situation, and I'm sure if you could not be in that situation, it sounds like maybe you wouldn't be. So since you have to, sounds like you have to be in that situation, the only thing you can control, you can't control them, so let them do them. But you can control how you respond and how you process what they are saying and doing. But you keep moving forward and do the healthy things for you. What are your thoughts, Dr. White?
I don't think there's a lot to add to that, to be honest with
Okay.
you.
Okay.
No,
All
well
right.
done. Yeah,
So, Ashley, hope you feel better. Sorry that you're
yeah.
not feeling well. Hope you feel better.
All right. So Scott Dingen said, "How to overcome schizoaffective disorder and psychotic depression." All right. So you're talking about notice now these are diagnosed well, especially schizoaffective disorder, and it usually has a subtype, whether depressed type or bipolar type. So
Mm-hmm.
these are diagnoses,
Yes.
and you can see that this requires professional treatment.
Yes, it
So
does.
Scott, it can often be a combination of um, correct diagnosis, and then there can be a therapeutic element to the intervention, and there can be a pharmacotherapeutic, element to to the intervention. And there's also a very important role of medical assessment to make sure that other things have ruled out to make sure you have the correct diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a role for medical intervention because you have the sunlight, you have the exercise, you have the good sleep hygiene, you have good diet. So I just want you to see the comprehensive nature that is involved in getting a great outcome. And it's not just meds, it's not just therapy necessarily. It is a combination of all those things so that a
Right.
person gets great care.
Right.
um,
Absolutely.
but no, great question. Yeah, you want to know that with schizoaffective disorder, you're talking about this kind of combination of both psychosis as well as a mood component.
Mm-hmm.
Psychosis is a big word for a person is having trouble distinguishing between what's real and what's not real.
Right.
And then with the mood component, you're saying there can be depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's symptoms that are characterized by depression, and then there's bipolar. And so there can be an elevation in the mood that more characterizes that bipolar component. And then with
Mm-hmm.
psychotic depression, I've already defined psychosis, but depression can progress to the point of severity to where it's actually associated with elements of psychosis. So a person's depression can get to the point where they're having trouble distinguishing between what's real and what's not real.
Mm-hmm.
So at that level of complexity, um, there can be so many interventions that are necessary, up to and including whether it's electroconvulsive shock therapy or deep brain stimulation or just a host of other
Mm-hmm.
things.
Mm-hmm.
But again, a lot of times when we think about mental illness, we'll think about the light stuff, that
Mm-hmm.
maybe we are seeing or that we think of. A lot of times we don't imagine the super severe mental illness, where a person's life is at risk because
Right.
suicidal ideation and self-harm behavior do often accompany psychiatric illness as well. So
Right.
um, it's something that deserves a full complement of creative intervention,
Mm-hmm. I
professional
just want to
creative.
add, like um, when I have people come in and they have been diagnosed with the, schizoaffective, um, I if they're not, and it's not just, but if they're in that family of disorders, if they're not currently taking their meds, it's like it's impossible, and they're not regulated, excuse me, and they're not taking their meds. It's impossible for me to do talk therapy or to do psychotherapy because they need it. I can do psychotherapy when they're on their meds and they're balancing out, but it's very difficult to do and to be effective if they're not on their meds.
Well, thank you for that context. How do you heal when your family has always used you as a scapegoat? The one that took the family trauma. It's like there was not affection in the mentally ill. Um,
Was not affected.
Having trouble with that question.
Okay. Oh, I see what she. Okay. Or I'm sorry, not she. Yeah, Sherry. It's like there was not affected. Like she was the mentally ill one, causing all the problems.
Oh, oh, okay,
Quote
okay.
unquote.
I see. I see. So isn't like there's I see. So there
She
are
was the
family
problem.
dynamics. There are family dynamics where at times there's a person who's identified as a problem when in fact the whole family unit has a problem and they're scapegoating that person and saying, "Well,
Mm-hmm.
fix her and everything will be okay." When in fact
Mm-hmm.
that's like I see now better,
Mm-hmm.
what you're saying, Sherry. Sherry, I think I think this is where it's so critical then that you kind of set your goals. You set your goals for your life. And then more than likely in a partnership with a professional mental health practitioner, so whether it's a therapist or what have you, you get clear now on, do I have an issue that needs support?
Mm-hmm.
And then what are my goals so that I understand what boundaries I need to set in order to achieve those goals. And you can see why it is incredibly difficult to provide advice in that context because we don't know your situation. Like
Right.
your well-being might be dependent on this in the situation that you're, and so you now have to figure out, hey, what are the boundaries I need to set? What are the goals that I have? And how do I work towards that? And so
Mm-hmm.
customization is just something so important in effective mental intervention. Sure, we
Mm-hmm.
might know the theories, but applying them to your specific situation, that's where that one-on-one, or that customized um, strategizing is critical. But great opportunity for us at least to mention that it's a very interesting dynamic where at times, there's this false identifying of this is the problem, when in
Right.
fact even if there is a problem there is a problem in the family system that might
Mm-hmm.
need to be
Yeah.
addressed.
It's definitely a family. It's in the family system, and that's why a good mental health professional, and someone who will even do family therapy, and it would be amazing if the family would go to family therapy and really address this if it was wanting to be healing. But it sounds like you're talking about healing just for yourself, because I don't know if the family dynamics is even willing or open to even thinking, okay, it could be, we need to look at this um, as a family instead of just one person. But definitely getting mental health professional help for you would be very good at this time. If your family never goes, that's too bad for them. But if you go, you can definitely start the process of healing. But it was a great question, Sherry. Thank you. All right. It looks like we have time for one more question. Is the love deeply emotional sad music? Oh, to love deeply emotional sad music. I didn't see the last part and it switched out. Okay, is the love deeply emotional sad music a sign of depression? I would no, it's not a sign of depression. Some people are more melancholy. I can tell you, my husband and I, our music tastes are completely different as far as like, you know, I he just loves different music than I do as far as it's more because he's more of a melancholic person. So his music vibe is more matching to his personality type, where mine is, you know, just more upbeat and flower. Like he likes things that let you make you think and meditate, and you know, he's always in deep thought about something. He likes his music to be on that level. It doesn't mean he's not depressed. He just likes emotional music.
Man
Like
after,
he feels the music deeper than I
yeah,
do. On his
man
level,
after
he
my
feels it.
own heart.
Yeah,
Like
see, you're like
I
that.
like music that has the power to lift me
Mm,
from, lift me from, let's say, even like sadness. And yeah, my wife Florence, like she likes uppity music is what I call it.
that's
And
me.
they all know, no, no, skip this one. But
Like
they know me. But yeah, it's, I don't know. There's something about music that makes you think. So I really can
mhm.
identify with them.
When we first got married, I remember we'd be in the car and he'd play his music, and I was like, can you turn that?" And then after like several times of that, he's like, "You don't love my music?" I'm like, "No, it makes me sad." Or it
That's
makes me
funny.
think about sad things. You know what I mean? Like, it's just different. Like, it makes him happy.
That's funny. My
Yeah.
wife is such a smart aleck. She's like watching right now, and so she's like, I can't imagine what you've written about me. Like such a smart aleck because of my comment from before.
That's funny. Okay,
That's
we
totally
have
funny.
time for one more. So if there's
All
another
right.
question, I don't know if there is another one. That might have been the last one. And that was from Sister Joanne. I didn't look who that was from. But no, Sister Joanne, it's not a sign of depression. Didn't know the name of that one. Okay, I don't think we may not have another one. It ends right. That would be perfect timing. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of fun. I had a
Yeah,
lot of fun. Didn't
this was amazing.
I
Great
actually didn't
idea.
feel the stress. We didn't have a topic. It was just free.
Great idea.
Freestyle.
Great idea.
So I think we'll do this more often. I mean, we're definitely going to have our topics, but we'll definitely be able to put this in maybe once a month. We'll see. I mean, we have to talk about it,
Absolutely.
but I
And
said there's a
just
lot of questions. You guys had a lot of questions, and it was a well-rounded topics that came up. So thank you, everyone. Please again share this on your social media because even if they weren't here live, they can still see it. It's going to be, of course, on YouTube, but uh, put it on your Facebook and wherever on your Instagram. Please share because this is you guys had great questions, and by God's grace, we gave some good answers.
always a pleasure, Sister Tante. Till next time.
Yes, to you too. Okay,
Bye
everyone.
bye,
Have a
guys.
good night. Bye
Yeah.
bye.
Okay.